The night arrived without warning or ceremony, unfolding like any other, calm and unremarkable on the surface. There was nothing in the air to suggest that it would become significant, nothing to hint that lives were about to quietly shift. It carried the usual sounds, the familiar rhythm of time moving forward, and the comfort of predictability. Yet beneath that ordinary calm, something waited, patient and unseen, ready to change the meaning of everything that followed. When they noticed each other, recognition was instant and unavoidable. Time had passed, but memory had preserved what distance could not erase. For a brief moment, both hesitated, caught between the impulse to move forward and the instinct to protect themselves. Their greeting was simple, almost restrained, but beneath it lived a rush of emotions that neither had prepared for. The past did not rush in loudly, it settled gently, filling the space with awareness and unfinished thoughts. Conversation began carefully, guided by politeness and restraint. They spoke of safe things, things that required no vulnerability. Yet every word felt layered, carrying echoes of moments once shared and never fully resolved. The familiarity between them was undeniable, resurfacing naturally despite the years that had shaped them into different versions of who they once were. It was strange how comfort returned so easily, how silence did not feel awkward but meaningful. As time slipped by, the sense of coincidence faded. The meeting no longer felt accidental. The world around them seemed to soften, as if granting them space to exist within this moment alone. Laughter emerged, quieter than before but deeper, shaped by maturity and reflection. There was an unspoken understanding that both were aware of what this reunion could stir, yet neither tried to stop it. They noticed details without trying, the way expressions shifted, the subtle pauses before responses, the familiarity in tone that felt untouched by time. These small recognitions carried weight. They reminded both of how deeply they had once known each other, and how some connections resist being forgotten, no matter how far life pulls people apart. Emotions lingered just beneath the surface, restrained but present. There was curiosity, cautious hope, and a quiet tension that neither named. Regret hovered too, not sharp enough to wound, but strong enough to be felt. Questions rose silently, unanswered but persistent, each one wrapped in the possibility of what might still exist between them. As the night moved closer to midnight, something undeniable took shape. This was no longer just a meeting of familiar faces. It was a moment of recognition, of awareness that something unfinished had found its way back into the present. Without declarations or dramatic shifts, the first surprise of the night revealed itself gently. Feelings once thought distant had resurfaced, steady and unmistakable, setting the foundation for everything the night was yet to reveal. As the conversation deepened, the careful distance they had been maintaining slowly dissolved. Words began to flow more freely, no longer filtered through caution but guided by sincerity. There was a noticeable shift in tone, subtle yet powerful, as both realized they were no longer speaking just to fill silence. They were speaking to be understood, to be seen beyond the versions of themselves shaped by time and circumstance. Memories resurfaced with surprising ease. They spoke of moments that once held meaning, not with bitterness, but with a gentle awareness of how those moments had shaped them. Laughter followed recollections that had once been serious, and reflection replaced what might have been regret. The past no longer felt heavy or demanding, it felt acknowledged, finally allowed to exist without judgment. With every exchange, the emotional connection grew clearer. Their eyes lingered a little longer, pauses stretched a little deeper. There was recognition in those quiet moments, a shared understanding that went beyond words. They noticed how easily they anticipated each other's thoughts, how familiarity returned without effort. It was both comforting and unsettling to realize that some bonds remain intact despite years of separation. Gradually, the conversation shifted toward the present. They spoke about who they had become, the paths they had chosen, and the lessons they had learned along the way. Vulnerability entered without being invited, carried in soft admissions and honest reflections. It felt risky, yet necessary. There was a sense that this openness had been delayed for years and was now finally claiming its place. When emotions edged closer to being spoken aloud, hesitation surfaced. Not from lack of feeling, but from awareness of consequence. Both understood that honesty would change the shape of the night. Still, neither stepped back. There was courage in staying, in allowing truth to replace uncertainty. When the confession finally came, it was quiet and unembellished, shaped by restraint but driven by sincerity. The admission did not demand anything. It simply acknowledged that feelings once believed to have faded had endured, quietly persistent. The response carried the same honesty, confirming that the connection had never fully disappeared. In that exchange, the space between them transformed. They were no longer circling around the truth, they were standing within it. What followed was not urgency, but clarity. There was warmth in knowing the feelings were mutual, relief in having named what had lingered and spoken for so long. Yet alongside that relief lived caution. They understood the complexity of rediscovered emotion and the responsibility that comes with it. Love, especially one revisited, brings both promise and weight. The second half of the night unfolded under this new awareness. Everything felt sharper, more intentional. The first surprise of the night had fully revealed itself, not as an unexpected twist, but as a quiet confirmation. Love had not returned suddenly, it had been waiting, patient and unchanged, for the moment it was finally allowed to be acknowledged. As the night moved toward its final stretch, a quieter understanding settled between them. The intensity that had marked the earlier hours softened into something steadier, shaped by honesty and awareness. They were no longer navigating uncertainty about how they felt. Instead, they were facing the reality of what those feelings might mean beyond this moment. It was a delicate balance between emotional closeness and the awareness of circumstances waiting just outside the night. The second surprise emerged gradually, carried in careful words and measured pauses. One of them revealed plans that had already been set in motion, a future that pointed elsewhere. It was not shared as an excuse or a defense, but as a truth that deserved honesty. The timing felt cruel in its precision, arriving just after feelings had been acknowledged, just as hope had begun to take shape. The weight of it settled slowly, reshaping the meaning of everything that had been said. Silence followed, not empty but full. There was no anger in it, no sense of betrayal. Life had simply continued its course, indifferent to emotional timing. They spoke about it openly, explaining obligations, ambitions, and the reasons behind choices already made. There was understanding on both sides, even when understanding hurt. Neither tried to rewrite the other's path. Love, they realized, could exist without demanding sacrifice. What surprised them most was how the revelation did not diminish what they felt. Instead, it sharpened it. Every moment gained significance, every word felt intentional. The awareness of limited time brought clarity rather than panic. They were present in a way that felt rare, fully aware that this night stood apart from the rest. It became less about what might happen later and more about honoring what existed now. They acknowledged the uncertainty ahead without trying to resolve it. No promises were made that could not be kept. Instead, there was honesty, respect, and a shared sense of gratitude. They recognized that some connections do not need immediate answers to remain meaningful. Sometimes, knowing that something is real is enough. As the night reached its close, the reality of separation hovered close, gentle but unavoidable. Their farewell carried no dramatics, only sincerity. There was warmth in the way they parted, and an unspoken agreement that this night would not be reduced to a memory of what could not be. It would remain a reminder of what had been rediscovered. Two surprises had quietly shaped the course of the night. First, the return of feelings thought to be long gone. Second, the reminder that love often exists alongside limitation. As they stepped away from each other, both carried the same understanding, that even if their paths diverged, this night had given them clarity, truth, and the rare comfort of knowing that some connections do not disappear. They simply wait for the right moment to be seen again.